There's a few things that Saudi Arabia is known for. The first on everyone's list is petroleum. With vast oil revenues and real control over an entire country, the royal family of Saudi Arabia has become one of the richest families in the world, maybe the most powerful. With this enormous wealth, the House of Saud is able to afford luxurious lifestyles, grand palaces, and a generous welfare state. The Seattle Times has estimated that about half the country is on some sort of welfare, a la the House of Saud. Now the royal family seems to have everything, palaces, cars, but there's one thing that the family really needs more of: money. No, seriously, they need more money. But Tom, you might say, it doesn't seem like Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman is going to start a brain-dead Kickstarter anytime soon. Right, but Prince Salman needs money for other reasons, and it's not the alleged drug problem that the Saudi royal family has. I don't think any amount of alleged cocaine or alleged alcohol could put a dent on that alleged fortune. Allegedly. Bin Salman doesn't need money to buy a house or a car or to live the American dream. He needs it in order to transform his country and achieve his incredible economic vision for Saudi Arabia. And he's doing this by selling shares of Saudi Arabia's biggest asset, the petroleum industry. This transformation is not just important to the country's and the region's economic health. This transformation laid out in Saudi Vision 2030 is a geopolitical imperative to save Saudi Arabia from impending doom. Although it is the 18th largest economy in the world, as it is right now in 2019, Saudi Arabia does not have a developed market. Its economy revolves around petroleum, and although it has become fabulously wealthy from this industry, the reliance on a resource-based economy is a death wish. I mean, look at what happened to Venezuela. A boxer with a strong left jab doesn't make him a good boxer, it just means he has a strong left jab. Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman Al Saud, the heir to the Saudi throne, a mouthful to pronounce, and, most might say, de facto leader of Saudi Arabia, knows this all too well, and is concerned about the fragility of the nation's economic infrastructure. The price of oil is basically what determines the Saudi economy. As the price of crude oil goes up, exporters sell oil at a huge profit, and because 42% of the economy is based on the petroleum industry, the nation prospers as a result. This can be seen in other petroleum-producing countries, such as Venezuela or Russia. But as of 2014, when the price of crude oil shot down from over $100 to $60 a barrel, those economies began to hurt and decline. This sent shockwaves across the oil-producing world. Not me though, because I got to fill up my tank for $30. Mohammed bin Salman, rightfully scared of Saudi Arabia's future and unstable economy, decided to act, and in April of 2016, he announced his plans to reform the country and turn it into a modern powerhouse. These reforms, called Saudi Vision 2030, is a plan to fundamentally change Saudi Arabia, and if successful, will change Saudi society as we know it. The economic goal of Saudi Vision 2030 is to liberalize the kingdom's market, which means that Salman will try to lessen the amount of the economy that the public sector or government takes up and try to increase the private sector. To do this, in 2015, bin Salman was given the keys to Saudi Aramco, the Saudi national oil company, one of the largest companies in the world by revenue, and according to Bloomberg, the most profitable. According to the news source, not the soon-to-be failed presidential candidate who owns it. Instead, bin Salman has decided to set Saudi Aramco up for an initial public offering, or an IPO, where he will sell off 1.5% of the company to institutional investors such as banks and Saudi aristocrats such as princes and clerics. The initial public offering is set to be the largest in history, narrowly beating out Alibaba's IPO in 2014. The estimated value of the corporation is set at, now get ready for this, $1.7 trillion. That is trillion with a T. However, this price was an incredible disappointment to Prince Mohammed, who wanted that valuation to be $2 trillion, where the goal was to sell 5% of the company. As the great Biggie Small says, more money, more problems, and the Crown Prince sure has a lot of money. With the dough that the Saudi government is expected to generate from this IPO, it plans to invest into 8 sectors in the kingdom's economy. These sectors include mining and metals, petrochemicals, manufacturing, retail and wholesale, tourism and hospitality, finance, construction, and healthcare. Some Saudi Arabia is already developed in, like mining and petrochemicals. Others, there's a lot of room for improvement, like banking and tourism. Now, Saudi Vision 2030 doesn't just revolve around expensive sectors. Education reform is a key factor in the kingdom's vision, as Saudi students are not learning skills they need in order to pursue a career. The Saudi educational system has been described as religious in nature and full of rote memorization. This can only prepare the kingdom students for one thing: a life on the dole. As I said before, half of the Saudi population receives some sort of welfare, and a lot of them aren't paying into the system. The refusal to work in the working age population, as well as a culture of not allowing women into the workforce, has led to a lot of missed out potential in the Saudi economy, as well as a drain on the system. Prince Salman hopes that he will be able to reverse that trend, as on the flip side, there is incredible potential. Now, just because bin Salman pushes his Vision 2030 as much as Sanders pushes his inconsistent communist utopia, doesn't mean it's gonna work. Like Bernie Sanders' inconsistent communist utopia. Saudi Vision 2030 has a lot of hurdles to overcome before it can become a reality. One of those hurdles is basically the project itself. Analysts have called the project too vague and too ambitious. Like Bernie Sanders' inconsistent communist, a vital part of the Vision 2030 is to build a new city in the northwest of the country called Neom. The city will look like it came out of Ted Kaczynski's worst nightmare. In Neom, all tasks will be automated. Robots will do the menial and repetitive work, the public transportation system will be run by self-driving vehicles, and it will contain flying cars, gene editing, an island of robot dinosaurs, and an artificial moon made out of drones. This really isn't a joke. I got this from the CBC. Investors who are skeptical of Aramco's valuation will also make life difficult for the reformer prince. If the value of Aramco remains at $1.7 trillion, then bin Salman needs to sell more than the original 5% of the corporation, and much more than the 1.5% it is selling now. Other analysts are concerned about the time frame of 2030, thinking that a measly decade and change isn't enough to transform a country such as Saudi Arabia. And with that, you can probably find the Crown Prince agrees. The deadline to transform Saudi society by 2030 is not in place because it's reasonable, but because that oil demand is expected to peak in the late 2020s or 2030s. This has to do with a number of factors, such as rich world and China demographic slowdown and decline, expected regulations on petroleum, and competition from green energy and electric cars. Once the demand for oil does decline, so too does the money that the kingdom will be able to put in its coffers. Much like 2014, it's imperative for bin Salman to make at least some headway in reforms in transforming the education system, getting Saudis off state money, fostering a private sector, and getting women into the workforce, at least by that time. Other problems that the vision faces are deeply cultural and political. Saudi Arabia is not only divided by rich and poor, citizen and non-citizen, but by religion. There are three main religious factions in Saudi Arabia: cosmopolitan Sunnis that live in the west in the historical Hejaz region, Shias who mainly live in the east on the oil fields, and Wahhabis, very conservative practitioners of Sunni Islam that have immense sway in the royal family and administration in Riyadh. The Sunnis in the Hejaz region have the most to gain from Saudi Vision 2030, as resources will be pulled to fund it from the oil sector in the east, and Wahhabi clerics will stand to lose political power as a merchant class rises and secularization happens. I just said a lot, let me break this down. Shias are already second-class citizens in the kingdom because ruling Wahhabi clerics don't like their dumb-looking faces and wrong form of Islam. The sector that many Shia make their lives in will start to downsize, and it seems like dung just keeps rolling downhill. The kingdom should at least be a bit concerned about this because of their rivals across the Persian Gulf. Iran also happens to be majority Shia as well, and believe me, they aren't too keen on letting Vision 2030 come to fruition. Iran has already supplied Shia fighters in Saudi Arabia's neighbor Yemen in order to stick a thorn in the Saudi side, and they are also the most likely culprit behind the missile attack on Saudi Aramco in October. It would be strategic for Iranian leaders to destroy the Saudi cash cow. Expect Iran to try to foment sedition within the kingdom's Shia community. Now, Wahhabi clerics, on the other hand, will give the reformer prince a headache, but from the other direction. Far from being an oppressed minority, Wahhabi clerics have immense power among many princes in the Saudi royal family. They are fully integrated into the political structure of the Saudi state. They are also exceptionally conservative. Consequently, they haven't really gotten on board with the whole idea of modernization, and will prefer things stay as they are. They aren't really fond of the educational reforms in the kingdom, particularly the history education, which stresses Saudi nationalism and teaches pre-Islamic history, which they view as haram. And I don't think you need to use much of your imagination to know what they think about women in the workforce. Now, there's an old saying, history doesn't repeat itself, but it sure does rhyme. And any historian worth his salt can tell you that this uniquely Saudi vision has echoes in the past. This past is about 800 years and 500 kilometers northwest of modern-day Riyadh, in medieval Europe. In the waning years of feudalism, Europe was caught between a battle of old institutions and new ones. On one side, there was the feudal lords and the church that benefited from the decentralized system since it kept the king weak and the peasants reliant on them. On the other, there was the merchants who gained from new commercial interests, and the kings who gained from a new tax base and a system that made his old rivals obsolete and wedded him with his new one. In Europe, the rivalry that took place created the modern nation state. And this seems to be exactly what Prince Mohammad bin Salman hopes to achieve. And if it is, he's doing it in a very historically relevant way. No one knows who will win this time, the princes and the priests, or the monarchs and the merchants. But like all questions in history, it is a question that we must answer as best we can. That each generation will be judged by whether the greatest, most consequential issues of the human condition have been faced. And that decisions to meet these challenges must be taken by statesmen before it may be possible to know what the outcome may be. This has been the 10,000. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, please like and subscribe in order to support the channel.